Let's first jump into why it's important to create an elder care plan before a crisis hits. And I say all the time to my clients that you can create a plan in the midst of a crisis. You can create a plan at any time, but when you do it in a crisis, it might cost you more money. It might be more stressful. You might not be able to gather all the facts and come up with the most effective plan, but it is never too late to plan. Doing it in advance, though, can generate more opportunities for you to create plans that are more effective and don't cost as much. So why don't I throw it out there to Ariel first and ask him, what's your thinking about creating an elder care plan during or before a crisis?
Yes, so this is a very important point. People often avoid these issues. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with mortality. They certainly don't want to deal with elder care needs. About 50% of Americans have any sort of estate plan, while 100% of Americans die. And most Americans, about 75% of Americans, will need some sort of care as they get older, and almost no one plans for it. The best time to plan for various reasons, including asset protection and Medicaid, is in advance, as everyone here in all the boxes, as Paul noted earlier, everybody will, you always want to plan in advance. Now, when there's a crisis, you have time to think about it. You have time to consider your options. You have time to protect more assets, which is a lot of what I do. Advanced planning is critical. That being said, if a person didn't plan in advance, which is most of my clients, there are ways to plan in a crisis situation. People don't like to deal with it unless the goings get tough. And that's the time when most people come to us. And that's the time, there's still time to plan. It's never too late. And that's important for people to know as they go about their care needs. It's best to do it in advance, but it can always be done, contrary to what a nursing home might try to imply in terms of how when you can protect your assets and when you cannot protect your assets. But that is definitely ideal to do it in advance.
Awesome. Thanks, Ariel. Jay, how about you? Why don't we bring you into the conversation? So it seems like it might be difficult to plan in advance in the home care space, but how do you create an elder care plan before there's a need?
Right. So yes, you're right. It's a little trickier in the home care space because truthfully, people in their minds, whether they are or are not, feel that they're independent and that they don't need any help. So to put a home care plan in place before it is really needed or it's going to be accepted can be challenging. So we focus in on establishing the relationship. I can say probably within 10 minutes of conversations I have with families initially, I'll know whether we are going to be able to help them if they need help. But we continue the conversation because what I really want to do is I want to establish a familiar and trusted relationship with the
Yeah.
family so that when and if the situation ever changes, they have already, whether they know it or not, they've already moved a little bit closer to knowing an agency that they hopefully trust and feel comfortable with. And we go as far as even when we know that a family does not necessarily need help right away, maybe they still are independent, and maybe it's the adult children that are pushing for some kind of in-home support but the parents aren't ready for it yet. Or maybe they are still independent, they don't need it. We'll still go if they feel comfortable with it. And in person, we'll go set up a meeting and introduce ourselves. Because during that conversation, we've now created a little bit of a familiar relationship. We'll be able to talk about their situation, what's going on now, and maybe are there little tweaks that will keep them safer at home and independent longer. So we
Yeah.
focus on establishing the relationship so that when a situation changes or a crisis happens, they have a familiar, trusted agency to go to.
Yeah. That's one of the things I like about your agency, Jay, because I think you and your team are really easy to work with. When it comes to elder care planning, with my clients, it's always one of the things that I advise them to do is if there is no need for home care right now, there's likely going to be a need in the future given the trajectory of your loved one's health. So understanding the agencies in your area and doing some interviews and some meet and greets and making some decisions about who you might want to work with if there's a sudden hospitalization and you need care at home following that hospitalization quickly. If you have a relationship that's already established, you can turn it on faster than if you didn't. You don't have to do the research in the midst of a crisis, right? You've already established those relationships. So
And
I
just to
would agree.
interject a little bit, Abby, I think
Yeah,
that's why you're so good at what you do, because you do get those thoughts in a family's head so that they realize there are options.
yeah,
And you avail them to that. And it's no probably different for you, Paul, right? Because, in the same situation, people may not need to move right away. But knowing you and Susan and having the Oasis name in their, old school Rolodex is critical for when that situation changes.
Well, yeah, and we take a very different approach than a lot of people. Our basis is education, not pushing one option over the other, because all of these care options are so bespoke. But to piggyback on something that Abby said, it is a bit about options. It's a lot about options because the later you do planning, doors or avenues are going to close to you, and those can have a variety of impacts. If you open a door, it may prolong lives or quality of life for a longer period of time, just because you put in some care. And it doesn't mean, and I think Ariel hit it, the sense of mortality or that I'm committing to things. But this is any of the things we're talking about, whether it be geriatric care management or legal planning or home care. It's really just about learning what's out there, and it's a supplement to your lifestyle. And that's what we're looking at a lot about is lifestyle. And I think for us, um, you know, broaching the idea of assisted living or independent senior living or a change, that's the biggest step anybody can take. And very few people end up taking it. But when you look at it, what you've done is you've set the goalposts and you know what's out there. And then we start to educate the family on, okay, if not this, what you may want to look at is this is what home care looks like for you. Did you know that there's such a thing as a geriatric care manager? Beyond, yes, I know you have a will, but do you know what other sort of legal stuff you should be considering and what messes you may be predestining yourself to by ignoring these? We can have those conversations if we're not acting in a crisis. If we're acting in a crisis, we're just solving the problem. And that's fine, but you're going to have more options, more flexibility, and probably better outcomes.
yeah. And Paul, I would imagine that for a senior advisor on senior living, that I would think that people are probably planning more so in advance when they're getting to you, right? To try to source those options and they've done some thinking. They're not necessarily in the midst of a crisis. Is that right? Would you say that or am I
I wouldn't, no, I wouldn't say so. I think there's a continuum. I think that, we get plenty of phone calls from the hospital at Friday at 5 o'clock because there's going to be a
Mm,
discharge. Okay. And
yeah.
that's no planning has been done.
Yeah. And they're
And
not going to be discharged to rehab. They want to be discharged to assisted living.
or home or whatever they want,
Yeah.
but or you're being discharged from a rehab and it's sudden because that's just an insurance decision, really.
Yeah.
Um,
It
and
happens tonight or tomorrow.
yeah,
It's a
exactly.
They're
24 hours,
not ready to
48
go home
hours.
yet.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then it's about finding resources. So whether we call Jay and say, "Hey Jay, I need somebody tomorrow," uh, you know, Jay's got a great company, but it may be a difficult job for him. The caregiver I have is at the other end of the county. We can't get them there tomorrow, or we can't get in there tomorrow. Or if you're looking for an assisted living for a respite stay, just to rebound a little bit, the one down the street from you doesn't have availability, or the one that does the particular type of care, or that your aunt was at, or that you've heard good things about, just isn't available. And that's a shame, that's the reason you're not getting what you want. It's because you didn't think ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.